Well, good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome you to Unit 6, rather. Where did I get 2 at? 2 was a long time ago. Last week we were dealt with marketing and strategy. This week we're going to carry it to the next step. We're going to be talking about sales and distribution, and we're also going to get into some management and leadership styles. Everything that's important. Okay. First off, to review Unit 5, let's go back and take a look at that. In marketing, again, we know that we had to deal with strategy, which is the big picture. How are we going to go about marketing our product? How are we going to go about finding which customers are the best ones for us to focus on? The tactic side is the specific steps of what radio advertisements are we going to use? Are we going to use TV? How are we going to use internet? What's our logo going to look like? How are we going to structure our brochures and our sales literature and the look of our establishment if we have a physical place? All those things go into the tactic side. So we saw that there's a couple ways to define your product to the marketplace. One, you can focus on features. Features is very much on the, how should I say, the provider's side. That's what you think your product is going to do. It defines all the options and all the technical ramifications and what have you. The other side is what benefits are there. Benefits is what the customer is going to get out of it. This is different than the features. The features may be, in a case of a computer, a really fast processor with a lot of memory. Okay? But what the person's going to get out of it is a reliable system that's very fast, that they don't have to sit and wait for things to pop up, that things come up very quickly. So it's what's in it for them that is the most important thing. But again, two different ways to define your product. I always lean toward focusing on the customer. We also, carrying that same thinking a little further, we looked at the difference between the 4 P's and the 5 F's. The 4 P's, again, seem to be very much focused on the provider of the service or product, saying what product are they going to do, what price are they going to offer it at, where is it going to be, and how are they going to advertise it or promote it. Where the F's are much more focused on what the customer is going to get out of this. What functions are going to be performed that the customer needs or wants. More importantly, what they want. How is it going to affect their finances? What about the freedom that this particular product and your way of ordering it or providing it is going to provide to them? I always like that feelings one because invariably people have a different vision internally than what reality is outside. Again, structuring your product to meet the internal image is much more important than what they quote quote need. And then the future side of that is how your service or your warranty or whatever it is you're providing is going to provide the customer with something better. What's it going to look like in the future for them so that you're going to be there, in other words, when they need you. Okay. We saw that there's definitely an acquisition cost when you try acquiring new customers. That involves advertising, that involves time to explain things to the customer. If you're in one-on-one conversation with them, it's very labor and time intensive and therefore very expensive. And if you're advertising, you have to advertise to a broader and broader group to attract more customers. So it can be very expensive. But once you get that customer has more value to you than the immediate sale that you get from them. That sale is a one-time sale. But if you can keep them as customers, A, you're going to get their future sales, and B, they're going to like you so much if they stay with you that they're going to refer other customers to you. So this gets into that realm of their lifetime value to you. Now, obviously, if you invest a tremendous amount of effort in gathering, in acquiring a customer, you sure don't want to blow it, as in the picture on the right side. Okay? It only takes a little bit to upset a customer or a potential customer that they never come back. We just went through this with my wife looking for an eye doctor to do her cataract surgery. And an offhand comment by one of the doctors while we were talking to him, and we walked out of the office and she said, "There's no way I'll have him do anything to me." And I know it was just an offhand comment from him, but it left such a feeling in my wife that there was no way she was going back to him for her eye surgery. So it's the simplest little thing that can set somebody off. So one has to be very cognizant when they're dealing with potential customers that every word and every nuance of their words is something that's scrutinized. Okay, we talked about branding. Branding is an important aspect in any business. We discussed very briefly how easy it is to recognize the value of brands. The pictures in the upper left immediately evoke certain feelings as you look at each one that you recognize. Okay? First off, most are recognizable. Secondly, most elicit a certain feeling from you. So what you want to do is accomplish that same objective in how you brand your business. So now we're talking about what promise are you going to offer your customers? What is the promise, if you will? What value do you offer? How is your message structured? Okay? And then we start talking about the identity that you're trying to establish of your business. And it's more than just the name. A catchy name is important. But by the same token, names can define a business and they can cause problems for a business. And I think we talked briefly last week about one of the big movie theaters, 20th Century Fox, or 20th Century before it became 20th Century Fox. And that's a really great name in the early 1950s. That was a very avant-garde name, 20th Century, right? It sure didn't hold much water by the time you got to 2001, 2005, 2010. You know, what an antiquated name that would be. Okay? So, you know, you've got to kind of look at what the name is implying to your customers. Logo, the logo is more than just the way you express your name. It's got to be unique. It's got to create that image that you're looking for. Your tagline, again, I think I used the example of LSMFT, Lucky Strike means fine tobacco, how it's catchy, it expresses a thought, and that thought, it holds in people's minds. And I'm sure you can think of 50 other taglines that you're familiar with that would accomplish the same thing. It would immediately bring something to your mind that particular business does or accomplishes, or how it affects you. Okay. So, and again, colors, the colors of your packaging, of your building, of your uniforms, all those things need to be consistent with whatever image you're trying to present. And by the same token, that coloring needs to work psychologically. Tries to elicit the correct psychological response from your customers. So certain colors elicit certain responses. And so it behooves a company, when they're trying to decide what color to use, to do a little bit of research into the psychological impact of different colors. Okay, moving on a little further. What else we talked about? We talked about that main idea you're trying to get across, what we refer to as your core message. Okay? And realizing there's many ways you can structure that core message. But what's really, really important is not all the information you put into that core message, but what the customer takes away. In other words, what they remember. And the most important thing they're going to remember is how that message elicits that feeling in them that they're getting what they're looking for. In other words, what's in it for them, they're getting it through that core message. This provides something that I really want. Okay? We talked about how to create your marketing budget. We said again, there's two ways. You can start from the bottom up, figure out how much advertising you need, and then figure out how much money it's going to take. Or you can do like many businesses do, especially once they're established. You take a certain percent of your revenue and you set it aside and you say, this is the advertising or the marketing budget we have. We will spend it as appropriate, but we won't spend more than that. Okay? So that gives you a baseline of what you can spend. Okay, moving on. Price is something that is important. Okay. However, if you're going into the business to attract the customers who want to pay the lowest price, so you're going to undercut your competitors and therefore attract customers, realize that it can be a very successful strategy. However, if another competitor comes on the scene and they can come up with a slightly lower price, those same customers are going to bail on you. They're going to leave you because their loyalty is to the lower price. Where if you can establish a quality image, okay, and get people committed to the quality that you're offering, then they're going to be less price sensitive. Okay? And because they feel that they're getting a fair value for the price that you're charging. Therefore, if somebody comes along and charges a much lower price, they're going to automatically assume or suspicion that the lower price has less quality and less value to them. And therefore, they're more likely to stay with you. So it depends on how you position yourself. Okay. We looked at different forms of advertising and the value of each. Car radio advertising, most people who tune into a particular radio station leave their car radio set on that station with great regularity. They seldom ever change their station. And when a commercial comes on, they listen to the commercial. Where a television ad, many times, a large proportion of the people watching that television show, when the commercial comes on, will find something else to do. It's when they get up and go to the bathroom, or they go out in the kitchen to get a drink, or they do whatever, but they're not there paying attention to the commercial. Or worse yet, if they have the ability to record and time shift the show, oftentimes they'll find a way to blink the commercials out, so that they're not even recording those. So again, that's another drawback. Signs, billboards have a place, but again, if the billboard is up in front of a highway where people are coming by at 70, 75, or 80 miles an hour, the information on that billboard has to be such that a person can glance at it and take away the main idea, to know who it is, what they're offering, and how they can get to it. Okay? They don't have time to read. They can't read a long thing. I hate to tell you, driving from Georgia down to Florida, down the interstate, and you look at the signs, and some of them, there's just no way to get the information off of them. Others work really well. So it just depends. But again, you have thousands and thousands of eyeballs going by that sign, and only a relatively small proportion may be the target market for your product. We talked about magazines. Magazines have a shelf life because oftentimes when people get a magazine in the first day, they'll look at it the first day, but they may not read it in depth. So they put it on the coffee table or wherever they keep their magazines, and they may come back to it several times. Okay? Well, each time they open the magazine, there's a possibility they're going to see your ad, and it may sink in. So you do have the opportunity for multiple hits there. Okay. Website, I think being as technologically savvy as online students are, I'm sure that everyone recognizes the value of a website. There is nary a business today that can exist without a website. Even the most simple businesses. When somebody is considering that business, one of the first things that in the online environment that they do is they go Google them, or they go check their website. Okay? Then they start looking for references or for referrals like Craigslist, or not Craigslist, like Angie's List or something like that. So I know, how good is this place? Is it one I want to do business with? Now, yes, there's still a percentage of the population that is not as technologically savvy and they haven't gotten there. But you talk to anybody younger than about 30, and they'll tell you right away that before they buy anything, the first thing they do is check them on the internet. So your presence there has to be consistent with everything else you do. Okay. So obviously, if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me, and we'll proceed from there. So what we're going to do now is move into the next level. Now that we've decided what the general approach to our marketing is going to be, now we need to talk about how do we do sales and how are we going to get the product to the customer. So nothing happens. Doesn't matter how good your advertising is, doesn't matter how great your product is, nothing happens till somebody makes a sale. Whether it's the clerk in the store, or it's the salesman going door to door to consumers, or salesman going door to door to businesses, or whether it's an online way of driving customers to your business. However it is, sooner or later, somebody has to say, yes, I want to buy your product. And seldom will they do it without some encouragement. So I particularly like the picture in the upper right-hand corner. For many of you know that at one time I had an insurance agency. My wife still runs that insurance operation. At one time I had 30 insurance agents, and they were all selling Medicare health insurance, Medicare supplemental health insurance. In other words, insurance to pay the part that Medicare does not. And the only way they got customers was doing what that gentleman is doing in the upper right-hand corner. They went door to door. And that's literally how that business ran. So it's don't think it doesn't happen yet. There are still people who do it. Now it's done in a little different guise. It wasn't long ago before we sold our house in Georgia that we had another company come around who wanted to take over the monthly maintenance on our heating and air conditioning system. They wanted to come by every 6 months, check out our heating and air conditioning system, upgrade our, take care of our filters, and if we needed new equipment, be there to fix it, okay, or replace it. So very much ended up being a door-to-door operation because we didn't come to them. They had to come to us. And basically they just drove around, and everywhere they saw an air conditioner outside, they'd stop and go talk to the people. Now, in that situation, you may have to talk to a lot of people to get a customer, okay? So anyhow, many different ways of doing the selling. The selling is more than just a customer walking in your front door to buy your product. And again, it depends on what product you're offering, what service you're offering. Okay. So we start off looking at the inside salespeople. These are people owned by you who are working out of your building. Okay. Normally there we think of the sales clerk and working at a desk or a kiosk or whatever, and customers are coming in, they're looking at your product and they're asking questions, and that salesperson is taking care of the sale. Okay. We have account reps, and again, account reps can be representatives working for the company, actual employees who are assigned certain certain accounts that they're going to service, and they take care of coordinating with that business. Normally this is a business-to-business kind of a operation, but their job is to coordinate with that person or that business, and to be there constantly for them whenever they're needed, and to provide them with whatever service or product that you're offering. Now, it can also be account reps dealing with individuals. So if you've ever had any experience with I'm trying to think of the financial services, financial rep, representative will come and talk to you about investing your savings properly and setting up of investing accounts and all. They have a certain number of clients, and they service those clients. They take care of everything that client needs in that area. So it's not just business to business. It can also be account reps dealing with individuals. Now, territorial reps are a little different. Here you give them a geographical area, and you give them responsibility for that. Now, they may be doing it all out of your office over the telephone, or they may have to be outside sales. Okay. Well, considering, let's finish up with the inside. Another form of inside sales would be telemarketing. Okay. This is a group of people within the business. Again, I think I mentioned that at one time with our insurance agency, I had 3 telemarketers on board. And all they did was call, trying to get leads for our reps to go visit for the ones that weren't as adept at cold calling, at just going door to door. So again, telemarketing is not, it may or may not be targeted at actually completing the sale on the phone. It may be just a case of getting the lead, but more often, on the flip side, it could be completely making the sale. Okay, and then obviously the online chat reps. You notice how many websites do you go to now that after you're there about 30 seconds or maybe a minute, a little sign pops up, a window pops up and says, would you like to chat with one of our representatives? So they have somebody there who can actually answer questions immediately. Now, it's not talking. Most times it's typing messages back and forth, although in some cases it can, they can even switch to phone. But again, that is a natural extension, because if somebody comes to your website and they start looking at different things and they go from one page to another, they're obviously looking for something. They're probably going to have questions. If you can have a chat rep be able to interact with them immediately and answer their questions, you're much more likely to be able to get a sale out of that. Now, the flip side to the inside salespeople are employees who are outside salespeople. This means they're actually going and talking to potential customers and doing whatever it takes to close the sale. Okay? More today, quite often, we see an outside sales force that's doing business to business. This is where your services and your products are being offered to other businesses. And so this requires some hands-on contact, especially in the beginning. And you have to establish that bond with that business, just like the door-to-door salesman has to very quickly create a bond with that potential customer when they're talking to them face-to-face. Okay. You can also go to sales reps. Okay. Now these are salespeople who may represent several different companies. Okay. So they represent more than just you, more than just your line. I'm trying to think of an example. I know many years ago we knew people that were working in the medical equipment marketplace, and they would represent several manufacturers of different kinds of equipment, and they would come around and present that information to home medical supply stores to get them to carry their product, so that that their products would be in front of the consumer. And so this again would be an independent representative who was representing several different companies. So they may represent your product, they may also be representing other people's products. And the ideal situation is where they're not representing several different competitors. What you want them to do is be representing lines of products that are complementary to each other. Okay, and then outsourced sales. Again, this is normally the mass telemarketing operations where the business is actually farmed out to an outside telemarketing operation. Or they may be computer generated, or normally it's telemarketing. Okay. So again, we got an outside sales force in addition to the internal. Now, how do you pay salespeople? Well, again, thinking of the ones that you must pay directly, which would be your employees. Okay, you can pay a salesman a salary. Oftentimes, that's the case in retail outlets. You walk into many department stores, and oftentimes the various sales clerks in the department store are not, are basically paid a salary, and so therefore they're not slanted to move you toward one direction or another for a particular product. Now, to increase the motivation of the salesperson to sell more and to perhaps sell different, specific products, you can add a commission to the salary. The salary is straight hourly pay or a flat rate salary. The commission might be a certain percent of the revenue on each sale that he makes or she makes in a particular line. And each line may have a slightly different commission. Obviously, the lines with the higher commission are going to be the ones that the employee is going to spend more time working toward, and hopefully because they can make a bigger commission. But the thing that's nice about having a salary plus commission, the salary gives the salesperson a base level of income that they know they're not going to starve this week if they miss a sale. Okay? But the commission part gives them the motivation to get out and do the extra work that it takes to get a lot of sales, because they're going to make more money the more work they do. Okay? So that's the advantage of a salary plus commission. The commission only really gets the people who are the most hungry, because in commission only, if you don't sell something, you don't get nothing. Okay? At the end of the paid period, there's no money coming in if you didn't sell something. So you will be highly motivated as a salesperson to go out and sell things. Now everyone goes, oh, working on commission, that's so scary. What happens if I can't make it? It is scary in the beginning. However, you're talking to somebody who for 25 years before I came to work for Kaplan, I'd say for at least 25 years prior to coming to Kaplan, I never had a steady paycheck. In other words, I never had a salaried check. I was always either on commission or running my own business, which is basically the same thing. If the business doesn't make any money, guess what you make? Nada. Okay. So living on commission is not a problem. It does take a certain amount of initiative to do the work that it takes to get out there and do the work it takes to get the sales. Sales are available. You just have to get out and get them. Okay, so those are the three ways that an employed salesperson, someone that was working for you, would get paid. Okay. Now, there are several different ways or channels that you can use to sell products. What we've been talking about so far is what I would refer to as direct selling. Okay. Also, it's referred to that way in your book. That's where your employee or representative actually goes out and talks to a customer, or the customer comes to you, and you are responsible for that person. Another option is using an agent. Okay, now we were mentioning sales representatives earlier. If the sales representative is an employee of yours and only representing your company, that's one way. Okay, but the other way is to use these representatives or agents that represent several different lines. Well, now you don't have quite as much direction over them. They're independent. They work for their own company, but they're going to be motivated to sell your product if your product and service is better, if your product or service has higher value, and if they get a better commission, and if it's easier to sell. So if it does what needs to be done for the client, for the customer, and it has the quality that's necessary, that's not, and is easy to sell, and has a decent commission, the agent is going to be quite happy to represent your product. Yeah, actually that picture came from, I want to say from Matrix, if I'm not mistaken. That was the agent in Matrix. So, another way of selling your product, let's say you manufacture something, well, you can get other stores to sell it. Maybe you can get it in the big box stores, in the Walmarts or the Costco's or the Sam's Wholesale or whatever. Or you can get even small retailers to carry your product. It just depends. Okay, so that's one channel, if you will, for selling your product. And by the way, your product can go in many different channels. It depends on the nature of the product or the service. Okay. Continue. We have online sales. Again, depending on the nature of your product and your service, online sales may be a very good way to go. Okay. Again, there's several things you have to consider with online sales. Definitely advisable to have some method that the person coming to your website can be able to connect with somebody right then and there to answer questions for them. And it's not really a great idea to have them send an email. A lot of sites say, click here, to contact somebody, and when you do, it comes up with a send an email, and they type in their message and they send it. But and then it says someone will contact you within 48 hours. Well, 48 hours from now, I want my answer now. I don't want to wait 48 hours. So if you can have a live chat session pop up, the person can get their answer immediately. And if they can, they're very interested in the product, they're much more likely to close the sale right then and there. Okay. Licensing is another way, again, depending on the nature of your product or service. Product mainly for licensing. What licensing is in its simplest terms is you have a product and there's some other company who wants to sell your product. You manufacture it, or you give them the specs and they can manufacture it to your specifications. But every time they sell one of their products, and it may have their name on it, they pay you a licensing fee. So they pay you a little percentage of what they're doing. So this is a really good way of going. It's a way to get other businesses to sell your product and to manufacture it and come up with all the costs. Okay. Continuing on, you can also use wholesalers and distributors. Wholesalers and distributors are a little different. A wholesaler is going to buy the product from you, assuming you're the manufacturer, at a low price, and then they're going to turn around and sell it to other businesses, retailers, who are ultimately going to sell it to the customer. Now that means the wholesaler has to make a certain amount of money on the deal, and there has to be enough markup in the product so that the retailer who buys it from the wholesaler at a slightly higher price than what you sold it to the wholesaler for, that retailer in turn can turn around, add more to the price than what he or she paid for it, and then sell it to the customer and ultimately make an adequate return on their investment likewise. Okay, so distributors, on the other hand, are similar to wholesalers in that, and that's why they're clumped together. Okay, normally, they're going to do something similar. They're going to buy at a wholesale price, but they're going to actually go out and market your product to a number of retailers. And so they're a slightly different operation, but in the same vein as what a wholesaler does. A wholesaler normally has a stable of customers that they deal with, and they're not constantly going out looking for new customers. They deal with a certain group. The distributor is much more likely to be looking for new customers and actually out there marketing the product. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about middlemen, what we call marketing intermediaries. Okay. And again, we mentioned the value of using agents. This is a separate entity, a different company that you're contracting with, that are basically making a commission on each sale. But they're selling a product, and you're the one who's going to provide the product. Okay. In other words, they're going to send the sales invoice to you. You're going to fulfill that invoice, mail the product, or ship the product to the consumer, based on that invoice, and you're going to send your agent a certain fee for that. Okay. The wholesalers, we talked about that a few minutes ago. Again, they're going to actually buy the product from you at a wholesale price, and then they're turn around and sell it to retailers at a markup price. But again, there's got to be enough markup in the product that the retailer in turn can raise the price even higher so they can make some profit off selling it to the consumer. Okay. and then using distributors. Again, very similar to what we were talking about. Now, you can use those outside organizations, or you can try to do it all yourself. If you're going to do it all yourself, now you've got to have the warehouse space, you've got to have the vehicles to transport the product, or you have to contract with for-hire carriers, to truck companies, to move your product. You've got to provide the reps in each area. So if you're trying to market your product over a large geographical area, you may find it quite burdensome to try to do it all yourself. Okay? So in this case, you may find it better to use those marketing middlemen or intermediaries, such as having agents out in the field, or more importantly, using wholesalers or distributors. And again, you want to read about that in your textbook. All I'm trying to do is give you a preview of what's going to be in your textbook for this week. Okay. Now, you may have heard the term pipeline. And here we're not talking about an oil or gasoline pipeline. We're talking about your sales pipeline. Okay. And so oftentimes when we're talking about sales, we talk about we need to get that pipeline full. What we're talking about is we want to have so many potential customers packed into the beginning of that pipeline that at the other end where we're actually making the sales, that we have a constant flow of new customers coming out. And not every prospect who goes into that pipeline is going to be a good customer coming out the other end. They evaporate along the way. So what we want to do is come up with a system to fill that pipeline. Okay? Well, we really are talking about how are we going to generate leads who may want to be interested in your product. Okay? And there's several ways to do that. The telemarketing is one way to generate leads. Your website is one way to generate leads. Door-to-door sales is one way to generate leads. Advertising, if you're selling at a retail outlet, if you have a storefront for your business and you're expecting customers to come to you, then it may be the advertising that's bringing them in. Okay? So what we're trying to do is lead generation. Get some people who might be interested. If you're doing cold call or cold lead generation, in other words, you send out a flyer or you put a flyer in a newspaper. You pay to have a flyer inserted in a newspaper that says we have a special discount certificate for anyone who brings a certificate in on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday of next week. We give you 10% off. Or something like that, okay? Some kind of an incentive to get the person to come in. Well, that's a cold process, okay? You're just firing it out there. You don't know who's going to take it. So if in the example of the door-to-door salesperson, that door-to-door salesperson may have to talk to 25 people in order to find one who might remotely be an appropriate customer for the product. Of those ones who what we call qualified, that would be the 1 out of the 25. Now your business, and again it depends on your product and the service you're offering, but it may be a case where you have to have 10 qualified leads to get one that's going to be a serious prospect that wants to buy your product. Okay? And so once we get them hot, if you will, it may take 3 of them, 3 really hot people, to finally close the sale, especially if you're dealing with an expensive product and a product that requires a lot of thinking about whether or not they're going to commit to it. You may have to have a lot of cold contact in order to generate that one final sale. Some examples of that, if you've ever done real estate or you're familiar with real estate sales, it takes an awful lot of tire kickers, if you will, who want to look at a house or a rental unit before you get to the one who's actually willing to commit to buying it. And again, it depends on the nature of the market, nature of the product. The tire kicker comes from people looking at cars. How are they going to buy a car? Well, they're going to walk around, look at it. Gee, do I want it? Kick the tire, see if the tire's good or not. So it takes a lot of tire kickers to get to the one really hot prospect that is chomping at the bit and wants that product now. There's no discussion about it. They want it now. And that's the one you're after. Now, there is a sales cycle. We know that we've defined our market. We've tried to figure out exactly who is going to be the most likely customers who would need our product, and then we've refined it down to the niche within that big marketplace that is the highest likelihood of wanting our product. And now we have to contact them. That's the prospecting part. So we do the initial contact to let them know what we have available and how we're going to fulfill what we think their wants are. Okay. Now, some of them will nibble on that, and they'll come forth and they'll start to inquire. And that's really what you're trying to do, is get them to say, tell me more, kind of like your elevator pitch. Okay. So now they become a lead. Okay. Because they've indicated some kind of interest. Maybe they've gone to your website or whatever. Okay. Now you have to explore the opportunity that your product provides them. And so you need to get in contact with them and ask the right questions and really get into what's going to satisfy their needs. Now, as you get into that exploration part where you're actually talking to your lead, some of them are not going to be really hot leads. They're going to be relatively low priority. They're just not going to be that interested in your product. Maybe they may be a good customer sometime down the road. Okay, in the future, but they're not right now for whatever the reason is. Maybe the low probability people just don't have the financial means to buy your product or your service. The medium people might be somebody who, yeah, they have the capability, and what you offer provides what they want. Okay, but they have many other options, and they're still exploring the other options. So they're medium probability. You need to find a way to convert them, if you will, to high probability that your product is the one that's most likely to satisfy their needs. It provides the best value and the best long-term, giving them what they want, giving them what's in it for them. Okay. So we move beyond that to once we've got them to high probability, and then we've got to close them. Closing them is basically saying, sign on the dotted line, here's how much it is, give us the money. Now they're an existing customer. Okay? Once we have them as an existing customer, we've got to treat them right so they stay a loyal customer, and more importantly, so they give us other prospects. They tell their friends, and now their friends become prospects too, and we get a chance to talk to them. Very similar to where my wife finally had her surgery at, her cataract surgery. One of our friends told her about this place and how good it was, and she says, tell me more, to our friend. And then she went in line and did a bunch of research, and she says, I'd like to go talk to them, and if they come across as well as I hope they will, we'll do business with them. We went to see them. They came across very well. They presented a very good initial impression. They really seemed to know what they were doing. They were professional. They did not try to upsell us immediately, which some of the other places did. And at that, my wife committed immediately. So word of mouth. That is the most important advertising you can ever do. But remember, this sales cycle exists. And so it's a constant revolving circle. So even though you have an existing customer, you still may want to keep, well, you will definitely want to keep massaging that customer so that in the future they buy again, okay, and that they do refer to you. Okay, this particular slide is another similar sales cycle. Again, it accomplishes the same things, but it uses slightly different words. Okay, this one is involving maybe more business-to-business options. You still have to generate leads. You've got to find out businesses that are likely to need your service, and then you've got to find out who is the decision maker. Oftentimes, that's the hard part. Once you're able to contact that decision maker, you've got to establish your credibility that you are, first off, a reputable organization, able to fulfill your requirements. You have the product, the quality, and the service that they're looking for. Okay? A lot of it is spending a lot of time finding out what does that customer need, what not, and more importantly, we use the word need. It's what do they want? What do they want out of whatever this is? Okay? And then you've got to present the solution to their problem. You have to show them how yours is the most valuable option that they have. It provides the most value for the amount of money that's being charged. You have to have a way to handle objections. Invariably, whether it's selling to a business or selling to an individual, there'll be questions at the end which are really objections, where the person is looking for a way that if you can't answer that objection, they're not going to buy from you. Okay? And then you need to finally close the sale. Nothing happens in sales, no matter how great your presentation is, and I used to preach this to my insurance salespeople when they were learning, no matter how great your presentation is, if you don't ask for the check, you've not made the sale, because that prospect is not going to voluntarily hand you a check until you ask for it. So you've got to find a way to close the sale. And then once you've gotten the sale, just like we were talking about before, we need to keep that momentum going so that we develop that long-term relationship with that customer. Okay. Now, if you're in a business-to-business situation, and you may be in a situation where you've got to submit a bid for whatever service or product that you're going to offer to the business. Okay. There are several things in your textbook that they go over on how to put your proposal or your bid together, things that need to be included in there. I'm not going to read them off to you. You can read the slide as easily as I can read it to you. But you definitely want to pay attention to that if your business venture is going to require working with other businesses, selling to other businesses, and it's going to require you submitting some kind of a proposal or a bid for their business. And most times when you're working with another business, first thing they're going to say is, show me in writing, send me, give me a bid so I can take it to the appropriate departments and get approval for it. So that's the key. Okay. Why do you think this picture is important? Just think for a second. You look at that picture. Why is that important? Now we're talking about a sales call. This is where you're talking to somebody who is a prospect. Okay? And we're really at the very beginning of that presentation part. Okay? And the key is not what you say, it's what they say. And so what you need to be doing is listening to them and asking questions. Okay? Ask them the who, the what, the where, and the why, and the how. Okay? You need to find out what they are most concerned about, whether it's a business or an individual that you're trying to sell to, even if they're up to the, coming up to your sales counter. Okay? If they ask you any questions, you need to be listening and you need to be helping them make that decision. Okay? And invariably, what is the most important thing to that prospective customer? It's what are they going to get out of it? Not what you're going to give them, but what they're going to get. Two different things. Okay? You're going to give them features. They want to know benefits. They want to know what they're going to get out of it. If you don't walk away with anything else from this seminar and the last seminar, keep that picture in mind. That's the important picture. Okay. Now, invariably in any sales call, the client is not going to just fall down immediately, or the prospect is just not going to fall down and say, oh yeah, I got to have it, here's my money, take my money. They're not going to do that, especially if it's a major purchase. They're going to have some objections. They're going to throw some roadblocks at you. What about this? What about that? How is this going to work? What happens if? And those are not necessarily meant to be a roadblock to you, but you need to be prepared to answer those. So before you go out in your first sales call, you need to brainstorm absolutely everything anyone could fire at you as to a reason not to buy. And then you need to have some very good researched answers to those. But again, all your answers have to come back to what's in it for them, how it's going to benefit them. That's the key. Okay? And then as I said earlier, absolutely nothing happens. No matter how great your presentation was, no matter how well you listened, no matter how you expressed exactly what's in it for them, no matter how well you answered their questions and their objections, nothing happens until you ask for the check. You fill out the paperwork. You've been filling out paperwork while you've been talking to them, and you can say, and we can have that product delivered for you by a certain date if you'll just sign here to authorize the delivery. Okay? And by the way, the fee is, you've already talked about the fees, what it's going to cost. You don't blindside them with it at the last minute. You've obviously, if you're establishing value, you've brought that out along the way. And you might say, and we need an initial deposit of half that amount today to go in with the order and the other half upon delivery, or however your particular product or service goes. But you got to ask for the check, because ain't nothing happening till somebody asks for that check. And then again, you may go into a whole round of more objections. And so it may be a constant kind of vacillating back and forth until they're finally convinced that this is the best thing they can possibly do. And then after you've gotten a check and you've walked away, you still have the risk of buyer's remorse. What's buyer's remorse? That's where somebody has made the commitment to buy something. Maybe they've even paid for it completely. And now they're wondering, did I make the right decision? When I chose that green Toyota, should I have really gone over and looked at the Chevrolets? Oh, gee, should I? Maybe I should back out of this. Okay? Well, again, it may require some additional hand-holding depending on the nature of the sale. Keep that in mind. Now, as you get into your business and as your business grows, there are going to be some people you're going to want to come to for advice and help. Starting off, there's just you. You may have some friends or family members who can give you advice, but you can establish an advisory board, if you wish, if you have some professionals who are not direct competitors of yours, okay, but who have an interest in your business, and they may be willing to once a month sit down and chit-chat with you. Great way to pick their brains, okay, and to really get some help. Obviously, your key employees, the whole reason you brought them in is they know something about the business or they have some knowledge, and if they're, you want to definitely take advantage of their knowledge, okay, and weigh it, obviously, but take advantage of it. If necessary, there are certain areas where you may want to hire consultants to assist you. Okay, now consultants you have to pay. As your business grows and as time goes on, you may find that you now have intermediate managers that you've hired. Your business is really growing. And you may end up with a board of directors that you actually have paid directors who have authority to make decisions about your company. So this again is an area that depends on how you're, and that's more when you're a corporation. Okay? When your business is incorporated as a C Corp, and the directors actually have authority to make decisions. But directors can get voted off by the shareholders, the people that own the most shares. Okay? So, flat versus tall. Let's talk about that. Basically, what we're talking about is how many intermediate levels between the highest person, if it's your company, you, and the lowest person, the person that's interacting directly with the customers. How many steps are in between? How many managers, if you will, or supervisors are in the middle? A very tall organization, okay, is going to have many intermediate levels, as we see here. Where on a flat organization will have very few intermediate supervisors, and so each supervisor will have many people reporting to them. So it's kind of many compared to few, and many in between. And of course, the more levels you have in between, the more your organization looks like a bureaucracy. So you don't, and bureaucracies tend to get bogged down. That's one of the problems with big corporations. It's so hard to get anything done because there's so much paperwork that has to be done before you get an actual decision. In a small corporation, you can get decisions right now. Okay? Now, another thing you want to be cognizant of, and that is the difference between managing and leading. Okay? Or supervising, managing and supervising compared to leading. Okay? In managing, basically you have a boss who says, do this, period. And they direct other people to do it. Leading, on the other hand, gets the workers who are going to have to do the job committed to the goal, and everyone, including the leader, pulling together to accomplish that goal. All the workers feel like they're part of a team, and therefore they are willing to commit more of their psychological energy to getting the job done. Okay? Where in a management situation, they may not have that same commitment. They're following orders to get their paycheck at the end of the week. That's all they care about. So the leader instills that group think that this is the objective we're after, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and we're going to do it together. Okay? So the question becomes, what is going to be your management style? How are you going to manage? Well, you can be the general who gives orders, okay? Or you can be the team player, where you get your people together as a team committed to a concept, and we don't have the rank that or the reliance on rank like a more hierarchical organization will have. Okay? So you want people to be creative and offering their ideas, and it's interesting because the lower the person is, the closer they are to the ultimate customer, the more information they can provide you, the more direction they can provide you. Now, if you ever want to do some really good research on how a great company was started and run, you need to look at this particular company, Southwest Airlines. And what we want to look at is this corporate culture. What do people feel? Okay? What is the image that they're trying to get across? And this is Miss Colleen Barrett expresses it very well. Okay? When she says, we are in the customer service business. We just happen to fly airplanes. The whole thing is how you service your customers. Carrying that a step further, if you were to look at the mission statement of Southwest Airlines, and I'll give you a second or two to read it, okay? And again, these are not just words, okay? And I'll tell you why in just a minute, okay? So it says, it's dedication to the highest quality of customer service delivered with a sense of warmth, friendliness, individual pride, and company spirit. So they have this warrior spirit among their workers, and a servant's heart, and a fun-loving attitude. You say, how in the world can a company have all this? Well, it really goes back to Herb Keller. He was the founder of Southwest Airlines, and his whole focus was on the workers. Focus on the lowest level worker actually interacting with the customer. Because if you take care of your people, your employees, they will take care of the customers. If they understand that they have the authority to solve a customer's problem, which is one of the things that Keller did, and I did some graduate research on him, so that's why I can say that. He empowered his frontline employees to make decisions without having to go to their boss that would solve a customer's problem. Okay? So, major operations. So if you can ever do any research on them, you want to do it. Just remember, if your people come first, and if you trust them right, they'll treat the customers right. If you treat them right, they'll treat the customers right. So, definitely want to be involved with that. Obviously, if you have any questions or comments, you know how to get a hold of me. What do we have to do this week? You've got 2 chapters to read. You got chapter 11 and chapter 12. Our discussion for this week is going to deal with distribution channels. You look at 3 of the biggies and then answer some questions about them. Remember that in your discussion thread, I'm looking for a reference. I'm looking, for the first post by Saturday night, and post on 3 different days and responses to 2 of your classmates. Okay. Your assignment for this week, your case study, is on Sky Factory. Definitely an interesting business. You have several questions to answer about that, and then how they deal with their employees. And then you, more importantly, you have the option to discuss, not the option, but the requirement to discuss how you intend to motivate your employees. Okay. Obviously, you should still be working on your final project. There's parts of that that have to be, if you work on a little bit each week, it should make it a little bit easier when units 8 and 9 get here. So don't forget your elevator pitch. Don't forget, all the other pieces that we've been talking about. So we want to look at that marketing side and that sales side now. Okay. You know how to contact me. I'm still at the same place, same numbers. And with that, thank you all very much. I will see you in this week's discussion, and I'll see you next week in the seminar. Thank you.